So
Well, these things happen, and
now I have 2.5 minutes.
well, Donnie, you left off talking about water quality and mussels.
Yes, so that's typically why Fish and Wildlife, in a lot of cases, that's kind of our species we tie to this. However, especially right now under the administration that we're under, there's a lot of interest on the other aspects that really are a selling point to these projects. It's, I as a biologist can certainly get excited about mussels, but we know that that's not something that most folks are going to have an interest in. So with the project, so the selling points for the Troy, and I guess I'll back up a little bit. We've been having these same discussions with the city of Piqua, city of Sydney, and the city of Troy. So um, we're really taking this as a landscape level effort for not only restoring water quality, fish and wildlife habitat, but also offering safer recreational opportunities, as well as improved recreational opportunities. So with the Troy project, once we kind of got through a lot of the technical aspects of how it's going to affect drinking water intake, or pumping of drinking water, the safety of the sediments that are in the substrates of the river. We kind of moved into what aspects would be, where could we meet, where's their middle ground or opportunity for us, EPA, which is our major funding source for these projects, and then obviously the city of Troy. So just to kind of give a brief overview as to kind of where we stand right now, and what I see as some of the benefits, as it relates to you folks, the decision makers on this. One of the key aspects, if anybody's familiar with, we tend to bounce back to this project quite often because it has pieces of what we're trying to do here, and that would be the restoration on the Scioto Greenways project in Columbus. With the removal of the low dam, they were able to gain some green space down in the floodplain that could be utilized for um, improved access. In their case, it was a giant concrete wall that basically cut the river off from the community and from the city. So with Troy's, if you haven't seen some of the renderings, that's something that you'll be seeing in the near future. We've been able to show with some of the modeling and survey work that um, we would be able to create a green space or floodplain bench on the downtown Troy side that would connect from the aspect of, obviously, in a maintenance type issue, it would be more than stable and large enough to utilize as a maintenance access road for the city of Troy or Miami Conservancy District, whatever you have going on. But more importantly, it's going to act as a green space recreational corridor for walkers, for bikers, for people fishing the river. And that's going to connect the Treasure Island all along the levee, down to where the dam currently sits. And then, having access, a connector to the Market Street Bridge, or there could be a couple different connectors, but we've been able to show that is a feasible option, and actually have gained the support from the Miami Conservancy District because it'll actually stabilize and protect their levee system. So they've really come on board um, to this idea. So another aspect, obviously, if I mentioned safety, it's really unfortunate situation, but I'm sure everybody heard of the situation that happened in Sydney just a couple weeks ago. Four people Tried to go over their dam, which is really a much smaller dam, but you know, it's really, they're really dangerous no matter what the size. I think that's the there's a lot of misunderstanding or lack of education on that with river users, just how deadly these currents can be on the bottom side of these dams. So unfortunately, Sydney had to deal with a situation like that, which we don't want that to ever be the driving force, but unfortunately it is oftentimes one of the ways that these discussions begin. So I'm happy to say with Troy and Piqua, we're really looking at this as a benefit to recreational use, the water quality. Um, it could have economic impacts, and very often it does. There's a lot of studies throughout right here in the Midwest that projects like this are a key part, if not the moment, in a city's efforts to and to gain economic um, benefits and attract people to that river. So Muncie, Indiana has a project that they're wrapping up on that is about as close as you could come to what we're doing here. They gained a green space corridor, and then businesses and recreational opportunities started showing up. And I know, to give an example, it's not near as much of an urban type setting, but I've been out on the West Milton low dam removal, which, ultimately that began in a much different situation or scenario. They had a very old and failing dam, which you do not. But I can say that I've been very, very pleased with. Obviously, I'm using it as well, but the not only the fish community has responded, but just last weekend with some family in town, there were people fishing on the banks. There were kids swimming in the pools and pockets that were established. There were kayaks and canoes going down through it. People fly fishing and wading. So it's really neat to see that stuff come along. And in most scenarios, you end up seeing an increase in river usage. And obviously, as you guys are looking at economic opportunities, that ties right into recreational opportunities. So you provide a safer or improved recreational opportunity, be it access or just a different type of reach of river. And very oftentimes you'll see that those river users utilizing the areas downtown. So, and I don't want to keep going nonstop without any thoughts. Does anybody, I'll stop here, pause for a minute. Does anybody have any questions on some of that? Yeah, go ahead, Jeff.
Two questions. If it's decided to remove the dam, what would be the timeline? And secondarily,
good question.
Secondarily, Donnie, let me put one more question in there. Is that we're scheduled to spend several $100,000 this year dredging the lagoon at Treasure Island. And my question is that if the dam is removed, what's the lagoon going to look like at Treasure Island?
That very good question. So I'll start with the first one, the timeline. So if you're not familiar with kind of where we're at on the efforts, we wrote and submitted an EPA grant through what's called the WRRSP program. That program essentially takes interest gained off of wastewater and drinking water infrastructure loans, which Troy maybe has had one in the past. I can't say for sure, but these are happening all over the state. They're a low interest rate loan for communities compared to shopping in the private sector. But it's still, these are large loans. And that money then that's gained off of the interest goes back into a pool of money that can be utilized for these restoration programs. So we wrote a WRRSP nomination, and that was accepted by EPA, and we have $4 million to get these projects done. So the only thing really that is not included in that would be any kind of, the bench, the floodplain bench in Troy's case would be covered under that. That would be the green space connector from Treasure Island to the downtown Market Street area, or the, as I've come to know it, the truck yard. That would include the work on the dam itself, and then also getting to your next question, it would include all of the in-stream habitat restoration that would occur in the river. So as part of this feasibility study, probably one of the most important aspects is, because of that investment we knew going into it, the investment that Troy has had in the Treasure Island Park, we knew going into this that that pool elevation of that lagoon is a critical piece to this whole thing. So as you'll see in a couple weeks, if you've not already, maybe some folks have seen some of the renderings. The cross-section survey work, the modeling has shown, we've basically indicated that we can put what's called a W-weir structure, and to not get into the details of it, it's essentially using large boulder type substrates to create a stable elevation in the river that's still passable by fish. It still allows sediment and nutrient transport to occur, but it keeps that pool elevation at a set level. So what would end up happening at a very minimum, you would have one of these rock structures north upstream of the Adams Street Bridge, and that's going to keep that pool elevation that you currently see at Treasure Island the exact same. So from right about, we'll just call it, just upstream of the Adams Street Bridge, all of the Treasure Island and up through the existing pool, you won't see any changes in pool elevation there. In terms of the sediments and things, unfortunately, as of right now, there's really not a backwater like that adjacent to the main channel. You're going to still have sedimentation in that. I know there's been some discussions on that small tributary or ditch that comes in next to Treasure Island. So it's, when the river comes up really high, ultimately what we are doing in the grand scheme of things in a 14-foot or flood stage event, all of this is underwater. So the lagoon is still going to act as a lagoon, but we can at least ensure the pool elevation that Treasure Island was restored around is going to be maintained. So you'll still have access and usage of the boat ramp and the pool area from Treasure Island upstream through there. And then you'll gain, from that point downstream, you would have benefits of the green space corridor connecting it to the business district along the river, a park-like setting, but also, increased paddling abilities of, some of the moving water type paddling that a lot of folks very often do when they go to the canoe liveries up and down the river. Those are often downriver, free-flowing stretches of river. So did that help?
It did. My question would be, better take all those rocks and put them in the lagoon and fill it in to make a green space, and then launch our kayaks and boats from the river's edge.
So to fill the lagoon?
Yeah, fill it in. I mean, make a green space out of it, and then you can launch your boats from the from the river's edge, and we don't have to mess around with.
Well, I mean,
money getting emptying, dredging the lagoon every 5 or 10 years.
Yeah, I mean, so obviously that would be, that would be up to you folks. We certainly could assist in modeling and design, but it's not. I guess it's not that. Not that it's necessarily a good or bad either way for us. It is an off-channel in a very different type of restoration. We actually put in off-channel or bank-full wetlands. This is a little different scenario there, but so I guess it's either way. I think we saw in this point in time that lagoon and the access to that with the restaurant and the boat ramps and what have you, we felt like having that pool elevation stay the same was going to be a critical piece to that. So the major parts of this restoration project and an idea is to gain that green space corridor, give access to downtown up to the Treasure Island area, maintain that pool area, and then provide, the safer paddling. You don't have a deadly hydraulic there at the base of the dam, and you have the ability to do downriver trips. And then, for our standpoint, it's not typically a huge selling point, but for our standpoint, we are very interested, as would be DNR or EPA, in the fish community and water quality response. So you see a very, very different fish community in those impounded areas, especially in the summertime when you get lower flow, warmer temperatures, the dissolved oxygen drops, you get algae blooms in that reach. And even with our technology of electrofishing, the fish communities in those pool areas are pretty poor, particularly in the lower flow summer periods. So anything else with anybody?
So Donnie, before you get off the harbor, we are budgeted, Jeff, to do $200,000 worth of work, but we reduced that to a kind of a test area of $75,000 because we want to test a technique to get rid of the silt. The silt needs to be removed. I want to say it's been more than 10 years since we had to do the silt removal. I think we did it right when I first got here. But Donnie, as part of this whole project, and I know Flatlands can probably answer this better when they get into their detailed modeling presentation, but the internal circulation should improve because there is that inlet north of Treasure Island and then into the harbor and then around. Mm-hmm. So with removing the low dam and with the speed of the river, it should improve a little bit. So it'll slow down the silt infiltration. Is that correct?
Yeah, I mean, it certainly could. Oftentimes when you're dealing with silt and nutrient management, as well as energy management in a river this size, typically when you start dealing with that, these are all important pieces of these restorations, but they're not, in any case, in any stream, they're not a one project fix. So without getting too far off topic, one thing that's happening under this WRSP nomination, as well as some National Fish Passage and Fish Habitat grants, just north of Duke Park, the Hules Camp Farm, as it formerly was known, and down in the floodplain, a site that we are removing 135,000 cubic yards of material to create one of these floodplain wetlands. Basically, to maybe give a better description as to the size of that, we're essentially taking 14 acres of that floodplain field and digging it 6 feet deep and removing all that material and hauling it out of the floodplain. So that will have a river connection that's designed by some consulting engineering firms that are specializing in this type of work. We've done the surveys and the models, and essentially what we're doing is when the stream becomes erosive in high water events, it's at that critical moment when you start getting the bed load in the river to start mobilizing, you start getting point bars building, you start having trees in the bank erode and fall in. So that, that erosion and sedimentation is happening all up and down the river. Some of it certainly is natural, but you guys Treasure Island will have the benefit of that 14-acre floodplain wetland actually pulling a lot of material, a lot of sediment and nutrients off of the river just before it gets down there. I won't say that one project is going to pull every bit of sediment out of the river, but this project is getting a lot of attention from the EPA, DNR, this new H2 Ohio program that Governor DeWine has released, and it sounds like it's going to survive the budget effects in the state with the COVID-19 response. So, yeah, I mean, this is one project that fits into a larger landscape level effort that we have that is really the entire Great Miami watershed. So there will be opportunities as we move forward that will continue to benefit this idea. So yeah, I mean, you'll see some improvement. To state an exact number, obviously we weren't looking at the lifespan of the Treasure Island Lagoon. I could show some examples on the sedimentation rate on the off-channel wetland, and they will all capture sediment. It's just a natural process for these side channels and whatnot. So,
and Donnie, to go back to the main river, probably the most frequent question that is asked by anybody and everybody hearing about this for the first time or having been through this process is, you get rid of the low dam, is it like pulling a drain on the river and suddenly the river is
a creek?
Just, a creek bed.
Yeah.
So I know Flatlands can get into the details a lot more, and hopefully they will, because that'll be the biggest question, I think. Mm-hmm. 30-second overview, what's really going to happen here?
Yeah, so these dams, the river width is going to change. I mean, there's no question about that. We're using that to our advantage in this case, that we're going to gain some green space corridor. The river width is unnaturally wide right there. If you look, basically, if you take the section of river below the Troy Dam down to 41 Bridge, that, or any free flowing section, basically, you could go upstream of the Treasure Island where it gets out of the impoundment. That is the natural width of the stream. So when we put a dam in, you have a wall in the river, you're stacking water at that point. There's no flood benefits to that, because your water level is set at that height when you start to get rainwater. So it's not, these don't act as a flood control dam. There's no flood benefits to that. In some cases, we actually can see improvements on flood mitigation with the removal of these dams, because you're gaining more floodplain surface in there. The part that I think people often, rightly so, if you've not been around these, it's hard to imagine that river changing. But what's happened over the 50, 60, 100 years, however long the dam has been there, you have all this material moving down the river, and that river is at it's naturally occurring and setting itself on its point bars and different things to move sediment, the sediment transport process, and it's carrying nutrients, and all that material is being shifted and moved down the river based on the size of the river, the floodplain, and everything else. When you put a dam in the river, all that sediment transport and that energy that's natural to that system stops. So you have what you end up having, and typically it's going to happen somewhere. There's going to be a point in that pool area that you have the maximum amount of sedimentation and deposits of this material that's coming downstream, that's going to start stacking up. So even though you're stacking water, you're at the same time stacking sediment and nutrients. Now that could be, in some cases, it can be a really thick layer of fine sediment, silt, muck, things like that. Oftentimes in the Great Miami, what we're dropping out is less of the muck. We have enough flow in this river. What you're getting is a lot of buildup of smaller gravel and sand. And that is very apparent as we went down and did physical surveys of the stream bottom. What Troy's stream bottom has become, instead of, cobble-sized boulders to large boulders, you have a pretty homogeneous flat bottom that's been filled in over time with small gravel and sand. So you are holding more water, but if you look at the lifespan of even things like Caesars Creek Reservoir, it's hard to imagine right now in our lifetime a lake or reservoir that size filling up, but it is occurring as we speak. These rivers or these lakes are filling up with sediment. So when we remove a dam, the reason we don't go to a dry creek bed is, one, that we're not changing the amount of water that's coming down. So the amount of water that's passing through Sydney, through Piqua, through Troy, down through Dayton, that is the same amount of water. Now, obviously, if you're adding creeks, you're gaining more water, but that same amount of water that's going over the dam now is going to be going through that area after the dam is removed. And then on top of that, that sediment transport process is going to start occurring. So to give an example of something right here in this county, if you were to go over, and I've been following it, helped with the mussel recovery. It wasn't really a part of it like this project on the front end. But if you look at the still water, which is, probably half the volume of the Great Miami, in some cases lower gradient, depends where you're at. But when we started that mussel recovery, we were working in very similar situations of the substrate being really thick layers of sand, maybe a little bit of gravel. Some of these areas were flat and 3 inches deep in some cases. Fast forward now to 4 or 5 years, I guess it's been. There's areas now that same water depth is, I can't go through it in chest waders, just fishing this spring. Now, obviously, water levels change in August, September, October, where we don't have the same river levels as May, April, May. But that sediment transport process occurred. We're actually unearthing, the river itself is pushing those sediments out, and now you have gravel and boulder and cobble that's that big that was buried under that sediment that the river is now re-scouring out and cleaning out its natural channel. So you're not stacking water, but you are having some erosion, and you're condensing that water into a narrower footprint. So oftentimes you're right, Patrick, it's probably the most common question or concern with this. And there's a lot of examples. Some have been better documented than others, but 9 times out of 10, people, when they realize and see this change with the river and see how it restores itself, and then we, in the case of the Treasure Island pool, can help stabilize a certain elevation if need be, or create scour in a certain area. The river really comes along, and that concern of the riverbed drying up is pretty quickly put to ease with folks.
All right.
That wasn't 30 seconds. I'm sorry.
That's all right. Are there any other questions from council members?
So again,
Patrick, do you have any final comments?
Yes, just that, again, on, let me see, that would be the 8th of June. We expect to have a formal presentation from Flatlands, who is the consultant that's been doing this study for us, as well as the 2 dams in Piqua. He'll focus on Troy here. Because then there is some council action that eventually, sooner than later, will need to be taken to go to the next step. So it was we thought important for Donnie to give a kind of an overview for those that are brand new to this whole project. And then we can talk it through in much more detail on the 8th.
Wonderful. Thank you, Patrick. There are no other items on the work session, so we will close the work session, and then we'll go immediately into committee meetings. And Chairman Allen with the Buildings and Utility Committee, the floor is yours.
Thank you, President. It is 5:46 p.m. on Tuesday, 5/26/2020. This is a meeting of the Buildings and Utilities Committee. I'm Zachary Allen, Chair. We also have Mr. Twilliger on, and do we have Mr. Twist on today? Yes, we do.
Yes.
Okay. We have 3 items on the agenda. Item number 1, we are here to provide a recommendation to council regarding authorizing the Troy Recreation Board to advertise for bids and enter in a contract for the replacement of the lower east side roof of the Hobart Arena at a cost not to exceed $120,000. Mr. Titterington.
Sure. So this is basically one of 3 sections of roofing on the arena building. You have the 2 wings, if you will, east and west, and then you have the main roof in the middle. Originally in the 2020 budget, we had the 2 wings to be replaced at a cost not to exceed $240,000. As part of our reanalysis of, if you will, of the 2020 budget, we determined, with the help, of course, of leadership of Mr. Seiler, determined with the consultant, or I guess the contractor or a contractor, that the east roof needed to be replaced sooner than later, that the west could wait until next year. And so as a result, the Recreation Board unanimously recommended to the council that they be given authorization to bid out the east side, lower east side roof at a cost not to exceed $120,000. We are not recommending emergency legislation.
I have just one question. All of that sounds good. I know we're trying to, adjust the budget, but was there any cost savings, or would there be any cost savings if we did them both at the same time? Just considering the crew would already be out there and all that stuff.
We probably would save a few $1,000s because of economies of scale. However, I can't recommend that you spend that extra $120,000 at this time. We have too many unknowns with our revenues. This was a key piece of the expense reductions for 2020. We are watching very closely. Of course, we've got the pool that's coming online, and we're not sure what the costs will be with that. And so there's just too many unknowns, and so we cannot recommend doing both roofs at this time.
I'm comfortable that if Mr. Twist and Mr. Twilliger are.
I am. I'm fine with that.
Other questions from anybody else on council?
Yeah, I have a question. Was this done when we did the expanded footprint for Hobart a few years ago?
No, it was not, because at the time this wasn't as big of an issue. The design work on the arena expansion was, it's been so long. It's between 4 and 6 years. 5 or 6 years since we started the design work on this. So a lot's happened since then, and a lot of years have gone by, more than because I asked that question during the budget as well.
And if we didn't do it at all this year, what would happen?
The roof that we're recommending being replaced, the contractor said is beyond its useful life, well beyond its useful life, and that it does need immediate attention, and trying to go through another winter season would be really pressing our luck.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Twilliger, Mr. Twist, we ready for recommendation?
Move forward. Yeah, move forward.
Okay, it's unanimous. We'll move forward on that.
All right, thank you.
Item number 2, provide a recommendation to council regarding authorizing the Director of Public Service and Safety to advertise for bids and enter into a contract for the demolition of city-owned properties at 110 East Canal Street and 212 South Mulberry Street at a cost not to exceed $350,000. Mr. Titterington.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So this is the 110 East Canal Street. It started with 110 East Canal Street, I should say. For the last couple of years, we've had a placeholder of $200,000 that we have carried forward as we've continued to do our analysis, not having any idea how much demolition might cost us. Since the original estimate, a couple of things have happened. First of all, we added 212 South Mulberry Street, that little church, and have had that combined with the property. And we've also had the architect, once you awarded the design work, go through and analyze in a lot more detail and do some testing of different materials, and get a much better idea of what the true demolition costs could be. When they took both of those properties into account and talked about, including removing the demolition debris, you have the cost of disconnecting all of the utilities, and then there are some environmental remediation that needs to be done to both properties. These properties are in the era where asbestos was used in some of the pipe wrapping and in some of the tile work. And so all of that needs to be factored in as well. And that's what brings the cost estimate up to $350,000. To offset that additional $150,000 cost, the design work bid came in at $550,000 roughly, whereas we budgeted $700,000. Knowing that we had so many unknowns related to this project, we did not include any cost savings for 2020 in the $2.3 million that was identified. So we do have that money that we can move, well, not move it, but use for the demolition within the total budgeted amount.
So it nets out the same.
It nets out the same.
Okay. Mr. Twist, do you have a question?
No, I'm good.
Mr. Twilliger?
Nope, understood.
I think we're ready to make a recommendation. I'm good with that if you guys are.
Proceed.
Yes.
I guess I should ask real quick. Does anybody else on council have questions? Mr. Schilling?
Yes. Yeah, again, as a budgetary savings, what if we moved this to 2021? What impact would that have? If we're trying to save money this year on our budget and we move that to 2021, would it have a significant increase in the cost of demolition, or I guess the question is, what impact would that have by moving it to another a year down the road?
Well, it delays the entire project. We are now well aware that we need to maintain our own property like we expect others to maintain it, and so we've started the mowing and the general maintenance of it. So it prolongs that, but it also pushes off the next steps, which is getting the detailed design work done, getting a footprint, the blueprints ready, and then getting the financing in place, which will include some bonds. And so you never know, now is a great time to go out to the bond market. Not that we're going to do that immediately, but the short term is better than the long term, at least is the way it's forecast now. And we've been talking about this project for several years now, maybe 5 years. And that for that reason, we kept the demolition and the design work in the budget and worked around that and identified other savings. So as far as our savings plan goes, this does not change that savings plan at all, but it keeps a pretty critical project online and on the correct timeline, we think.
Okay. Any other questions? All right. I think we are ready to move forward and make a recommendation.
Yeah, move forward.
Second.
All right. Item number 3, provide a recommendation to council regarding authorizing the Director of Public Service and Safety to enter into professional services agreement with the firm of Hazen and Sawyer for the design of the blower replacement project at the wastewater treatment plant, and at a cost not to exceed $222,000. Mr. Titterington.
So this is a project that was originally budgeted at $120,000 in the sewer fund. This is, as you stated, it started out as a design agreement for designing a replacement for the blowers. However, since the time, this has been on our 5-year capital plan for a number of years, but as time has gone by, in recent years, our average daily flows at the wastewater treatment plant have been increasing. Double-edged sword. It means that we're bringing more industry in. It also means that we're bringing more residential properties into town, growing the town, growing the economy. However, we are nearing plant capacity. Again, this is the sewer plant, not the water plant. So as part of the request for qualifications that we sent out to various design firms, we asked them to quote us a process modeling component, which would, in layman's terms, because that's all I got for you, is that it would analyze what our capacity is, but also where our, pardon the pun, pinch points are, and what parts of the process we would need to expand, renovate, and increase to also increase capacity at the plant. We have had some inquiries in economic development opportunities on the manufacturing side, one of which we were not able to bid on because it was a unique manufacturing process, but it was one that would and could have potentially added a great deal of demand on, I guess, supply on our to our wastewater treatment plant. So we need to be thinking about and planning for in the next few years what we need to spend to increase the capacity at the wastewater treatment plant. And this is the first step. And including this, Mr. Schilling, especially since you asked about the, or I'm sorry, Mr. Allen, you asked about the economies of scale and the other project that we talked about. By incorporating this analysis with this design firm, we can get a couple of things done at once. At what should be some savings because they will be looking at the whole picture and not just one aspect. The extra $100,000, we do have some savings in the design costs associated with the Riverside project, phase 3 and 4, as well as some grant funds that we'll be able to use for critical infrastructure design. So there will be money in the sewer fund budgeted that we can use.
Excellent. I have no questions. Mr. Terwilliger, do you have a question?
No, sir, I do not.
Mr. Twist, any questions?
No questions.
Anybody else on council? We ready for recommendation?
Yeah. Move forward.
Second that.
I agree. We'll move forward. Do you have anything else for us today,
No,
Mr.
sir.
Titterington? Okay. That ends the Buildings and Utility Committee meeting. Thank you.
Would you like me to start mine?
Certainly.
Did I see that Council President Lutz had to leave the meeting?
He did, yes.
All right, I thought so.
It's all yours.
Right, it is approximately 6 o'clock. Are you ready, Mr.
Yes.
Chair?
Yes, ma'am.
It is approximately 6 o'clock on Tuesday, May 26th. This is a meeting of the Community and Economic Development Committee. I am the chair, Lynn Snee, and also here are members Bill Rozelle and Bill Twist. We are meeting tonight to consider authorizing the Director of Service and Safety to apply with the Ohio Development Services Agency for the program year 2020 Community Development Block Grant, or CDBG, funds for various projects. Mr. Titterington, do you have information about this?
So just for benefit, a reminder for those council members that were here 2 years ago, and also a little tutorial. We used to receive funds through the state for CDBG every year. Several years ago, the state wanted us to combine those into a 2-year program, biennial program. And so for the last couple of cycles, we have come to you every other year with a 2-year combined total. That was basically because of the administrative costs at the state level and the fact that over time, the CDBG allocations have been decreasing. This year, for the program year 2020, we will receive $150,000. We followed the federal process, public hearings, input. We solicited projects. As you can see from the memo, we received one project, and that was for the Family Abuse Shelter for $40,000 to assist with the Franklin House roof repair. The additional amounts are to support the Madison Lift Station repair project. And what you might recall is in the 2020 budget, we included $450,000 budget item in the stormwater maintenance, a stormwater fund. Since that time, we've identified the opportunity to submit for a CDBG Critical Infrastructure Program Fund, a grant for $500,000. The additional $50,000 would help with our matching because that project, Madison Lift Station, could be as high as $600,000. Additionally, as we've done in the past several years, we've got $30,000 recommended for the street corner accessibility ADA ramps as we do sections of sidewalks in the eligible areas of town. We can improve the ramps with the knob mats and the ramped corners, the intersections. We have the annual or the biennial obligation for fair housing program expenses. That's $3,000. That is a federal requirement. And then we are able to capture $27,000 towards general administration costs through the authorization of the federal government and the state guidelines. You'll see that with regards to the Madison Street lift station, again, we'd ask for $500,000 in CDBG critical infrastructure, $50,000 out of the program, the CDBG program. We can take $25,000 out of the CDBG revolving loan program and use that towards our match. as well as 25,000 of the 450,000 out of the Stormwater Improvement Fund budget. We are asking for emergency legislation. The timelines are fairly rapid, given that we have so many steps to go through, including a public hearing that has to be advertised so many weeks in advance. And then the application is due fairly quickly as well, June 17th to be exact. So we are asking for emergency legislation to be considered.
Okay. Mr. Rozelle or Mr. Twist, are there any questions about this?
No.
No.
Questions from any other council members? All right, seeing none, what is your
Move forward.
Yeah, move forward with emergencies, fine.
Then it's unanimous to move forward with emergency. And I don't believe we have items.
I'm sorry, you cut out.
I did?
Yes, you did.
Yes.
Oh, I'm sorry. I said we are moving forward. Was unanimous to move forward?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah.
Do not have any other items for this
No, ma'am.
committee. All right, we're adjourned then.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Rozelle.
It's 6:07, May 26, 2020, and this is the Community Partnerships Committee. We're asked to provide a recommendation to council regarding authorization amending the lease between the City of Troy and the CIC project related to Lincoln Community Center. Deals with the parcel that council approved last week to become part of the replot. And we have myself as chairman and Mr. Zach Allen, Mr. John Swayzer, as committee members here. Anything else, Patrick?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So what you have in your packet is an amended lease. This is a lease that, again, is between you and the CIC. A virtually identical lease then would be signed between the CIC and the Lincoln Community Center. The differences between this lease and this amended lease and the original lease is that it incorporates 124 Ash Street, which is a property that Lincoln Community Center is giving to the city. And then again, that will be replatted. There's an alley vacation that will that is on process, and actually will be discussed tomorrow with Planning Commission, and then you will see that as well. Other than combining those two properties and making that part of the overall lease, there are a couple of minor things that are changing in terms of maintenance, ongoing maintenance that work to both parties' advantage. Number one, the park department would assume all of the grass maintenance. Lincoln Community Center, however, would do all the landscaping, the beds, etc. We would also do the plowing of and salting of the parking lots, which may seem like a lot, but the offset of the new building going in reduces the amount of green space that has to be managed, so that works to our advantage. And then rather than our staff having to go out every three to four times a year, maybe more depending on the type of year we have, and clean out the gutters because it takes our equipment and our staff, lift station, etc., lift truck, etc., to clean out the gutters. The Lincoln Community Center would assume that responsibility in return for these other maintenance items that we'll be taking on. So all in all, it's a good amendment. Lincoln Community Center Board has approved it. The CIC has approved it, subject to council approving a change to their lease. We are asking for emergency legislation. Things are happening fairly quickly. Given that we are now in the construction season and Lincoln Community Center has been out to bid on the construction of their addition to the rear of their current building at 110 Ash Street. We are asking for consideration of emergency legislation.
Any questions, Mr. Allen, Mr. Schweizer?
No.
Yeah, just one. If this is approved by council, will 124 Ash Street, which now becomes 110 Ash Street, just assume the same zoning?
I believe the zoning, I'm not sure, I'll have to double check the zoning, but I don't know that the zoning would change because it's already in the city. I'm not sure if it is the same zoning designation as 110, but I believe it might be.
Okay, thank you.
Any other members? Questions?
Move forward, emergency.
I'm good with emergency.
Unanimous, emergency, move forward.
Thank you.
Anything else for Community Partnerships Committee, Patrick?
No, sir.
Then we are adjourned. Have a good weekend.
All right. Thank you all.
See ya.
Thank you.